Hello everyone, good morning. So today is 16th of April and we are going to start with the Hindu analysis. So we'll be discussing the most important topics of today's paper and then based on that, you can prepare your current affairs. All right. So the first topic that we're going to pick up is that Iran is saying that blockade is a threat to ceasefire and it warns it will shut down Red Sea traffic. So what is happening that there is a blockade on Iran at the moment by the US, and Iran is saying that because of this blockade it is facing a lot of challenges and it is actually warning that it will shut down the Red Sea. Now we know we've already seen these issues come up in Strait of Hormuz also, and now a new warning has come up that Red Sea can also be shut down. So a couple of questions arise over here. First of all, is it legally possible for Iran to do so? Is it legally possible for Iran to shut down the Red Sea? Now, is it possible? Is it not possible? One question. Second, if any disruption of this sort happens in that area, what implication is it going to have on India? And what is going to be the alternative? The alternative for India, right? Now you know that there's a lot of tension ongoing between US, Iran and Israel. There was a ceasefire that was declared for 2 weeks. Now peace talks began, the first phase of peace talks began in Islamabad, but no conclusion could be taken forward. Because there was a lot of concern, US actually wants Iran to stop its uranium enrichment program. So no proper discussions could happen and no conclusion could actually come up. So there is an anticipation that these peace talks are going to continue further also because the doors on the peace talk have not been closed. But no proper conclusion could take place so far. And right now there is a blockade on Iran. This blockade is basically, kind of restricting Iran from exporting its oil. And we know that it is very important for Iran's economy to export its oil. So that is why Iran is threatening that it will now shut down Red Sea also, and it will cause a global disruption if this blockade is not removed. So now let us answer the first question. Is it possible legally for Iran to do so? So no. Legally, this is not possible. If we look at the situation over here, the Strait of Hormuz, we have the Bab el-Mandeb, we have the Red Sea, Suez Canal, everything over here. So Strait of Hormuz is also very important global energy corridor, and Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb is also a very important energy corridor, not as important as the Strait of Hormuz, but definitely very important. Somewhere around 8 to 10% of the global energy trade is passing through this area. So it is not actually possible for Iran to legally close the Red Sea because A, it is not bordering Red Sea, and then it cannot legally do so. But what can it actually do? There can be proxy warfare. So we know Yemen is over here and we have Houthi rebels in Yemen, which are backed by Iran. So definitely disruption can be caused by Iran. A lot of disruption, and disruption has already started. So ships can be restricted from moving across this passage. This can happen, and this is a very important corridor over here. It's a very important strait over here because it's connecting Red Sea, Suez Canal, Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, everything together. So it's actually our transit route that we can move towards West Asia and Europe. India can actually move its do its passage, do its transit through all these channels. So it is definitely very important, and any disruption that is going to happen here is going to cause severe implications on India also. So for that we'll have to look for alternatives, correct? So the first alternative that we have is the Cape of Good Hope. Cape of Good Hope, that we pass all the way from Africa and then we do our trade. So that is also problematic, though it is an alternative, but it is problematic because it's a long route. It is a very long route, and if it is a long route, it is going to increase the number of days. So some 10-15 days are going to increase in our journey, and when the days will increase, the cost will also increase. So the freight cost is also going to go up. So it's not a very feasible route. It is an alternative but not a very feasible route. Otherwise, we'll also have to start at looking at diversification of our options over here, diversification of import of oil from here. So we'll have to rely more on Russia, more on the US, more on other areas, Western African countries, instead of Iran, instead of Middle East, instead of West Asia. We'll have to diversify our options. And this is what India is actually doing at the moment also. So these threats that are coming up, that it can completely shut down Red Sea, that cannot happen, because UN clause is also there. UN clause, an international treaty which actually allows the ships from all countries to use this transit or passage freely. Whatever international transits we have, countries can use them freely for their trade. So legally this cannot be done, but definitely a lot of disruption is possible, because there are Houthi rebels, because a proxy warfare can take place over here, any naval blockade can happen, these kind of restrictions can happen, and this will not be a good situation for the entire global energy trade. So India will have to look at diversifying the options. We'll have to look at other routes also, and most importantly, in the long run, we will have to look at other energy alternatives like renewable energy. Because we do not have a lot of such reserves. Strategic petroleum reserves are there, but we do not have a lot of reserves over here. So we'll have to look at other alternatives, because we'll always be dependent for our energy requirements. And the situation in the countries, in all these countries, West Asia, Middle East, it just keeps on deteriorating. So we cannot really keep on relying on these countries in the long run. We will have to become self-reliant, and we will have to look at cleaner energy options, better energy alternatives. That is what India is doing at the moment, but it definitely needs to pick up pace. Okay. So this is what Iran is saying. It is warning that it will shut down the Red Sea traffic. Disruptions can happen, but legally this is not possible. Now moving on. The second news says that door-to-door visit by census enumerators in 8 states and UTs is beginning from today. So we know that this census is ongoing. It's the first fully digital census, first caste census after independence that is happening, a very important thing that's happening right now. And the first phase has already started. First phase is your housing and house listing operations. Now, before this physical enumeration, self-enumeration portal was open for 15 days. And this is the first time self-enumeration was happening, that people could just have entered their own data on the application, and a QR code would have been generated. And whenever this physical enumeration is going to take place, when field visit happens, they can simply show this QR code and the enumerators are going to get the data. So people who have already done self-enumeration, it is going to be easier for them, and people who have not done self-enumeration. So for 15 days, self-enumeration was happening in these 8 states and UTs. Then the window closed, and after that, we are now starting with the field visit. So it's very important in phases. It is going to be implemented. Right now, this is being implemented in Andaman Nicobar, in Lakshadweep, then Goa, Karnataka, Odisha, etc. and some parts of the National Capital Territory also. So we need to be very careful over here. A set of 33 questions are going to be asked. Okay, questions like your house assets, what kind of household is it? So all these different property related questions. But at the same time, we also need to be aware of a lot of digital scam that can take place. So it's very important that we stay vigilant, that we do not have to share our personal information like your bank details, your PAN card, your Aadhaar card, the Aadhaar card numbers. These are the informations, this is the information that is not actually going to be counted, because this is the first phase, which is housing and house listing operations. They're actually going to look at the property, the kind of house that you are living in, kacha house, pakka house, rented house, or is it your own house? What kind of assets do you hold in there? How many people are living in there? So 33 such questions, but they are not going to be very personally identifiable information. So it is very important that we be aware of these situations, and you also please let people at your home, elders and everybody, make them aware of the situation, that they should be vigilant of any digital fraud or scam that can happen right now. So the first phase has begun. It is being implemented in 8 states and UTs right now. Once this is going to end, so it is going to end in 30 days, somewhere around 15th of May. This is going to end, and once this ends in these 8 states and UTs, new implementation or a different set of states and UTs is going to be picked up. And meanwhile, self-enumeration portal is going to be open for other states and UTs, right? So this is what's happening for the census at the moment. Now moving on to the next important news, which says that there is a slight increase in unemployment rate in March. Okay, so the data has come in for labor force participation rate, and it says that the unemployment rate has seen a slight increase. So what do we have? What do we have? Like unemployment rate over here is basically for the people who are eligible for work. They are seeking work, but they have not been employed, right? So we have a labor force, all the people who are seeking work, 15 years and above, all the people who are seeking work. Now people who are employed are the worker population, right? And out of this, the people who are not employed make up the unemployed population. So the unemployment rate has seen a slight increase. It has now moved to 5.1% in March. From 4.9, it has increased to 5.1%. But the problem over here is that this situation is worse in the urban areas. If we look at the data, we will see there's a lot of urban joblessness. So in rural areas, the unemployment was 4.3, while in urban areas, it stood at 6.8. So urban areas 4.3, rural areas 6.8. And if you see the gender gap in this, if you particularly focus on the female unemployment rate over here, so in the rural areas again 4.3, and in the urban areas 9%, as high as 9%. So what is the country witnessing right now? Urban joblessness. Now what could be some reasons because of this? So some reasons that you can cite are that there is an educated unemployment problem. Educated unemployment problem in urban areas, meaning people are more educated in the urban areas. They are looking for jobs, but they are not getting jobs. Why are they not getting jobs? Because they are looking for advanced level jobs, they are looking for skilled jobs, and at times they are not getting the job that they like. They're looking for white collar jobs. They do not want to do unskilled, semi-skilled work naturally, because they're educated, they have worked on their education, their academics, their degrees and whatsoever. So now they want more white collar type jobs, more skilled jobs, but right now they are not being able to employed in that sector. That is why there's an educated unemployment problem. There could be a problem on the supply side also, and B, there could be a skill mismatch also. Many times there's actually a skill mismatch also. The kind of skill set that people are holding versus the kind of skill set that is required actually in the industries or in these companies, there is a mismatch over there. So that's why also we see that a lot of educated youth is actually not able to get employment in the urban areas. So skill mismatch is another issue. And then if we focus on the female labor force over here, so why are females not being employed in the urban areas? Again, they are waiting for the right opportunity. Many a times, people choose to stay unemployed until unless the kind of job that they are looking for, exactly the kind of job that falls into their plate. Till that time, they actually prefer to be unemployed, because they are economically well off. At times they do not really require to be employed at all times, so they choose to wait. And if we talk about females over here, so these special social norms like you have to take care of the child, you have to take care of the elders, it's actually more prevalent in the urban areas. Like in a household, most of the times, if the husband is earning, and husband is earning enough, so the wife can actually afford to stay at home, because she has to take care of the child, she has to take care of the elders. So the special social norms, they are very much prevalent, they are stricter in the urban areas, and the wife is only going to pick up a job or take up a job when she feels that the right opportunity has come in, or a great opportunity has come in. So many a times these norms are also dictating unemployment in the urban areas. Then we see the gig worker problem. So gig workers, the number of gig workers are increasing, the number of gig workers in employment, they are increasing. But the problem is that gig work is unstable, right? Gig work is unstable. Today you might be employed, tomorrow you might not be employed. So this data is very volatile, it is unstable. So gig worker data, it is increasing, work is increasing, but it is unstable. Because it is unstable, this data keeps on fluctuating. And then in rural areas, we don't see this problem so much in rural areas, because what is prevalent in rural areas? Disguised unemployment is prevalent in rural areas. Most of the people in one family, they are working on the same farmland, so the productivity is marginal. Productivity is actually zero. Whatever work they are doing is not actually adding to the productivity. So there's a lot of disguised unemployment. So they are a part of the workforce because they are working, but are they adding to the productivity? No. So there is disguised unemployment. A lot of people in the household, they are working or they are either self-employed. So in rural areas, the employment situation is better because almost everybody in a house is working. Whether or not they are adding to the productivity is a separate question altogether, but at least they are working. Versus in the urban areas, the situation is that people are going to wait for the right kind of job, for them to land into the right kind of job, because they are waiting for a job to match their skill set. And then at times there's a skill set mismatch also. The demand for certain types of jobs is higher in the country, and people, whether they are even educated, they are not carrying that skill set. That's why they are not able to fit into the correct workforce in urban areas. So the situation that we are seeing right now is of urban joblessness. And overall also, if you look at this data, or the entire data of this labor force survey, we'll see that the labor force participation rate and the worker population ratio, that has also come down, slightly decreased. That has also seen a slight decline, which means that in general also people right now at the moment, they are not joining the workforce. Now there can be several reasons for that as well, and this data keeps on changing. But overall, if we talk about this data, it says that there is a problem of urban joblessness because of all the points that we saw in the earlier slide. And overall also the employment is decreasing in urban areas mostly. Overall also this employment is decreasing. Okay. Now moving on to the next article, it says that memflation drove PC sales in first quarter. Memflation. Now you know these terms, they become kind of a favorite for the UPSC prelims examination. It could also just be a one-liner question that can be asked, that memflation recently seen in news is related to which of the following. So memflation is actually memory price inflation. Memflation is memory price inflation. Now we saw that the growth, that the sales of PC, they increased. Personal computer sales, they start growing a lot. Now the real question over here was that, did the demand for PCs increase at the consumer level? Why did we see a rise in the PC sales? Did the demand increase, or is there something else? So is this natural or is this artificial? This growth, is it natural or is it artificial? So it was found that this is actually artificial. It is artificial. It is driven by something that is known as front loading. Front loading. Now what is happening is that the memory price is increasing. Memory price meaning the RAMs that we have, DRAM is there or NAND is there, or these chips that we have, memory chips, their price is actually increasing because there's a lot of volatility in the situation. Semiconductor prices are increasing, and then there are a lot of other factors also, like demand supply factor is also there. There's a demand supply mismatch as well. Demand supply mismatch in memory chip production. So some time ago, this demand was less, so the supply became less. Now suddenly the demand has increased. There has been a surge in demand because of the coming of AI. Now there has been a huge surge in demand, and because of that, more and more such memory chips are required to be inserted in the PCs. But because there is a demand side constraint, the supply is also getting affected, and that is why we are seeing that these memory prices, these registers, these are their prices are significantly increasing, and that's causing this inflation. So this inflation is being termed as memflation, memory price inflation. And then I told you that the semiconductor prices are also increasing. Semiconductors are essential in making these chips. And here also we see that the prices are increasing because there is tariff, there is volatility in the situation, very much uncertain situation throughout the world. Tariff war, trade war is ongoing, and semiconductor also, there's a lot of monopoly that is there within China. So a lot of things are happening, and that's why also the semiconductor prices are increasing. Now because all this is happening, that's why the memory price is increasing. And because memory price is increasing, that's why in anticipation, these vendors and distributors of PC, they are actually stockpiling PCs. They are buying more and more of PCs because they are anticipating that these prices are going to rise even further. So they must stockpile before itself, and that is called front loading. That is called front loading. Buy anything before it becomes more expensive, right? And that is the situation that we are seeing with PCs at the moment. So the end users are not actually consuming this. End users are not buying more and more PCs because the demand at the consumer end has not increased. These vendors and these distributors over here, they are adding to their PC stockpiling because they know they are heavily dependent on the chip industry, and they know that the prices of memory registers are increasing, like your DRAMs, NOT and AND. So these are increasing now. Because these are increasing, they are a critical part of our PC. AI is increasing. There's a rampant use of AI. So more and more such semiconductors, such chips are going to be required. So these vendors and distributors are stockpiling these PCs, and that's why we saw that the sale of PCs saw significant growth. However, this was artificially induced, and that's why this came in news. This term came in news, memflation. Okay. So now we'll move on to the last news of the day. But before we do that, if there are any questions, if there are any concerns, please go ahead. Okay, all right. So now moving on to the last important news for today. The wholesale price inflation rises to 3.88% in March on surge in crude rates. Now the wholesale price index inflation has actually seen a 38-month high, and it has now reached 3.88%. So in the last 3 years, this has been the first time that WPI inflation has actually touched 3.88%. And the main reason behind this is actually the surge in crude oil prices. The surge in crude oil prices. So WPI inflation, it is this basket of goods that we have wherein crude oil plays a significant role. Crude oil, petroleum, natural reserves, and these natural resources, everything at the wholesale level, not at the end consumer level. For end consumer level, we have the CPI inflation, consumer price index. This is actually the wholesale price index. This is at the wholesale level, at the producer kind of a level. So we are talking about raw materials and inputs right now. So these raw materials are becoming more and more expensive, and right now the consumers are not facing this kind of an inflation. CPI inflation also rose, but not to the extent of WPI inflation. WPI inflation is seeing a significant surge because the crude oil prices are increasing. And why are the crude oil prices increasing? We all know, because of the West Asia crisis, the West Asia conflict that we are seeing at the moment. So today also we began our discussion with the warning that Red Sea movement can also be disrupted. Strait of Hormuz movement is already disrupted. Red Sea can also be disrupted. Bab al-Mandeb can also be disrupted. Sea of Oman can also be disrupted. So this is a very important global energy corridor that we have. So when this kind of a disruption is going to happen, and every country, if it starts looking for alternatives, for example, in India's case also, we start looking for alternatives. We go through the Cape of Good Hope, then we are going to increase our freight costs. When the freight costs are going to go up, then overall at the consumer level also the prices are going to go up. Right now we are not facing that amount of an issue at the consumer level because the excise duty on petrol, it was also cut down by government. So government at the moment is trying to keep things, steady and stable and in its hands. But if it keeps on continuing, if it just keeps on prolonging for a very long period of time, then what? there can be a problem. There can be a problem at the consumer level also. So that is what that we need to understand, that the situation in the entire West Asian region is very, very dicey at the moment, with such warnings and blockades and issues coming up. Disruptions are happening, and because these disruptions are happening, the crude oil prices are going up, and everything depends on energy. It is extremely important for transport, for electricity, for everything. So everything is depending on energy. So if the crude oil prices are going to surge, we are going to see inflation go up and up, and that is exactly that what we are witnessing at the moment. So WPI prices, they have risen to 3.88%, mostly because there has been a surge in crude oil. CPI also rose, but not somewhere around 2% or something, but not as much as WPI, because I told you the excise duty has been cut on petrol. And the difference that CPI is at the consumer level, WPI is at the wholesale level. And the base year for this is 2011-12. CPI's base year was revised recently, but WPI is still 2011-12. So these are some things that are happening because WPI is increasing. Now in the long run, this can actually start affecting consumers also. Right now, it is not going to affect end consumers to that extent, but it can affect the consumers in the long run. So that was all for today's discussion. I hope you found it useful. Now every day we are going to pick up the important topics that we see in Hindu, and then we are going to cover it. Thank you so much for watching. If there are any questions, please ask. Yes, international north-south trade corridor is also another route, but that also is going to, depend on Middle East and West Asia. That is also going to depend on these West Asian countries. So if there is any conflict, if there's instability in the region, that is also going to get affected. Iran is a party to that. That is also going to get affected. So we need to ensure that whatever corridors that we are following that belong, pass through the Middle East, there has to be stability in that region. Otherwise, this blockade is going to continue. This restriction is going to cause disruptions and everything. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and we will meet tomorrow with a new video.